U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing China to put more pressure to North Korea. He tweeted his disappointment that China is allowing oil to go into Pyongyang.
Get this, U.S. spy satellites reportedly capturing images of Chinese ships illegally selling oil to North Korea. And this happening dozens of times in the past few months from companies that were sanctioned by us. So what does this mean for our relationship overall with China now that we have pictures to prove it?
Trump wrote on his Twitter account on Thursday that there will never be a friendly solution to the North Korea problem if this continues to happen. South Korean media have reported that North Korean ships received petroleum products at sea from what appeared to be Chinese vessels. U.S. media report that China is denying such transfers took place. The U.S. Treasury Department last month released photos which it says depicts an attempt by North Korean vessel to conduct a ship-to-ship transfer, possibly of oil. It said such a transfer is prohibited by UN Security Council sanction resolutions.
U.S. President Donald Trump accused China Thursday of facilitating oil shipments into North Korea, despite China's insistence it has not violated United Nations sanctions limiting oil shipments to the rogue nation. Writing on Twitter, he said he is very disappointed. A South Korean newspaper reported earlier Thursday that Chinese and North Korean ships had illicitly connected at sea to get oil into North Korea. The UN Security Council last week imposed new sanctions designed to limit North Korea access to oil in response to the country's recent long-range missile test. In November, it test-launched its latest intercontinental ballistic missile, which many US experts have warned would be capable of striking anywhere on US soil. The sanctions seek to bar 90% of refined oil exports to North Korea by capping them at 500,000 barrels a year and limit crude oil exports at 4 million barrels annually. China has repeatedly said it is enforcing all resolutions against Pyongyang, despite doubts in the US, South Korea and Japan that loopholes continue to exist. When asked at a recent media briefing whether Chinese ships were illegally loading oil on North Korean vessels, Defense Ministry spokesman Ren Ge-kyang repeated that China and its military are strictly enforcing UN resolutions on North Korea. The situation you have mentioned absolutely does not exist, said Ren.
Beijing says it has stopped oil product exports to Pyongyang for months now, and an unprecedented step in response to the regime's provocations, even going beyond what's required and under the new UN sanctions. And as our Kim Mo-kyun tells us, the unexpected cold shoulder got the Hermit Kingdom's attention.
Reuters news agency reported on Wednesday that China conducted a strict no-oil export policy towards North Korea last month. Citing data from China's General Customs Administration, Reuters said that China had suspended exports of gasoline, jet fuel, diesel, and fuel oil to North Korea, a move that far exceeds what is required to do under the latest UN sanctions imposed last week, which limit refined oil exports to the regime to 500,000 barrels a year. This is the largest and longest such sanction imposed by Beijing. Previously, it had only suspended sales of oil products to Pyongyang for 3 days in 2003, following Pyongyang's missile test. One North Korea expert said the latest move is expected to deal a significant blow to North Korea's market economy, but added that crude oil exports are even more critical to the regime itself.
I think North Korea's market economy, also known as the Changmadang, will be hit hard by the cut in petroleum exports. But since the data did not reveal details about crude oil exports, the state economy could be less affected.
From early this year, trade between North Korea and China has been slowing, especially after China banned coal purchases in February. China's trade with North Korea fell to $388 million in November, the lowest volume recorded this year. Beijing's grain exports to Pyongyang in November also dropped to record lows this year, with corn exports plunging 82% to 100 tons and rice exports falling 64% to less than 700 tons. However, Chinese exports of liquefied petroleum gas to North Korea rose 58% from a year earlier to 99 tons, while exports of ethanol increased 82% to 3,428 cubic meters.
The rogue state should brace itself for the impact of tougher sanctions piled up against it. According to a report by the Korea Development Institute, effects of the UNSC Resolution 2375 will be felt next year. The measures were adopted in September after North Korea's latest nuclear test. The resolution bans itself from exporting coal and textiles while blocking oil imports to the north. KDI researchers add a fall in Pyongyang's exports will lead to a drop in foreign currency receipts and contract its economy. Data shows a 28% on-year drop in the regime's exports to China between January and October.
The United States and Russia have spoken with one voice on North Korea, saying they will not accept the regime as a nuclear power. But the U.S. isn't interested in Moscow's offer to play the mediator between Washington and Pyongyang.
U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said Wednesday that top diplomats from the U.S. and Russia have agreed that they will not recognize Pyongyang as a nuclear power. The agreement was made during a phone call the previous day, with both sides expressing concerns over the North nuclear program. The two countries' foreign ministers also agreed to work together to resolve the issue through diplomatic channels. However, regarding Russia's offer to play the role of mediator to get the U.S. and North Korea back to the negotiating table, Washington in effect turned down the proposal, saying it, quote, has the ability to communicate with North Korea through a variety of diplomatic channels. This is according to a Voice of America report quoting a State Department official. Previously, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also said the U.S. has 3 to 4 direct communication channels with the North Korean regime. The U.S. stressed that Pyongyang needs to understand that there is a different path that it can choose, although it is up to the regime to change its course. Meanwhile, the U.S. also urged China to sever all economic ties with the North, including expelling all North Korean workers, and to use its unique leverage over the North to bring the regime back to the negotiating table. 박지원, 아리랑 뉴스.